What up? What up? Okay, I guess that's kind of how I always introduce my online lessons. But today we are here to talk about democracy in the United States and the significance of that in our country. As you know, when you think of the term democracy, you think of majestic things like a bald eagle flying over America with machine gun, protecting us from the evildoers. At least that's an image that I envision. I would go to Google and Google that image for you on here, but some of the images that pop up might not be appropriate for class. But, anyways, in our country, in our political system, we have a democracy, which means rule by the people. We make decisions in regards to who represents us, and that is unique to our country and our political system. There are two types of democracy, direct and indirect. A direct democracy is not very feasible because everyone participates in all of the decision making. We could not do that in our classroom with 30 people, let alone in a country as large as ours. So that is not a feasible way of governing and passing public policy. So we have what's called an indirect democracy, meaning we don't directly make decisions on public policy issues and what our country does, but by choosing people to make decisions, we do have an indirect role in that process. That is also known as a republic. Technically, that is what we are. We are a republic or a representative democracy. Again, we choose people to represent us. And hopefully, we make good decisions and people who we feel have the same kind of public policy goals and ideas that we have. And that varies throughout the country, as we know. If you go into the South, representatives are going to have much different views than if we go into the West Coast or the East Coast, which tend to be a little more liberal, where the South tends to be a little more conservative. So this solves the problem of direct democracy that we obviously know is not something that is feasible. Where is the power in our democracy, in our political system? There are several views on this. And again, you can't, from a concrete standpoint, locate power and say, oh, there's power. We may be able to look at people and say, they've got a lot of power. And certainly we're seeing that in regards to the election or the nomination phase for the President of the United States between the Republican and Democratic parties. But there are four basic views you need to know, some more important than others. Majoritarian political view is the idea that we believe that leaders make decisions based upon the will of the people. And when they make decisions on laws, public policy, whether we go to war in other countries, they make these decisions always thinking back to the people that elected them. And although that sounds wonderful and that sounds truly democratic, I think we know that there are elected officials out there that don't necessarily do that. The second view is this elitist political view, the idea that there's a elite group of people who are making decisions and might have a disproportionate amount of political power. There are two views in this regard. One is economic elites, the idea that people with a lot of money have a disproportionate amount of influence in regards to our governing and public policy. I think that maybe this is a realistic view, and maybe we see this to a degree, but obviously we know that money doesn't necessarily mean power. If you look to the last election, we had groups of people spend millions of dollars trying to elect people to office, and they weren't successful. So although I do believe that money means something in politics, it doesn't mean everything. The second view is there's a group of individuals with a disproportionate amount of political power or political capital, which I've mentioned. The idea that they have connections, they have influence, and I think we do see that in regards to some politicians. I mentioned Hillary Clinton. She has a tremendous amount of political capital. She has a tremendous amount of connections, and we certainly see that on the Republican side as well. The third view is the pluralist political view, the idea that you have plural, meaning more than one, many groups, and that there is no single elite that have power over our process of governing and passing laws and public policy. I do believe that we have a tremendous amount of groups in our country that have influence, although not one of them with the most influence. This can be seen in political parties and especially in interest groups or you might have a group of people with a common interest, such as pro guns or pro choice, that try to influence public policy, but are not always successful because you have different politicians and different elected officials that are going in different elections, or excuse me, different directions. Hyperpluralist political view is that there are so many groups competing for influence that nothing gets accomplished. And unfortunately, I think you see this to a degree in our political system, especially today. We have so many groups that have influence, some more than others, but all of them have some influence for the most part. And whether it's influencing one member of Congress or many members of Congress, they do have a tremendous amount of influence. I would say that you have kind of a combination between the elitist political view and the pluralist theory as well, kind of a hybrid between the two. Obviously, you have to have some connections, you have to have some money to be successful in our political system, but that is not the absolute, meaning just because you have those things, it doesn't mean you accomplish things. So some of the fundamental democratic values: popular sovereignty means that the power ultimately resides with the people, and that is inherent in a representative democracy. You make the decision who represents you. We don't always do a good job at that, and we have officials that get elected that we think could do a pretty good job, and then they might not do a pretty good job. But ultimately, we have the power to rescind that right that we give people to govern over us and make decisions if they do a bad job. At the national or federal level, if we're unhappy with the president or judicial decisions, you could impeach, meaning Congress can impeach them. We could request that they impeach them. When George Bush was president and sent troops into Iraq, there was a call by some liberals to impeach Bush, impeach Vice President Cheney. They were not successful. Impeachment is a very rare process. It does not happen very often in the history of the United States and our democracy. But if you're unhappy with an elected official, certainly you do not have to re-elect them. Congress or the House of Representatives has a 2-year term, the Senate has a 6, and the president, as you know, has a 4-year term. If you're unhappy, don't re-elect them. Another fundamental democratic value is individualism, the ability to be who you want to be, with some limitations. Obviously, you can't step on other people's rights for the most part, but we have the great ability to be very much individuals in our society, where other countries and other government forms do not allow citizens to have that right. Liberty, inherent in our country. Again, oftentimes you think of freedom, you think of maybe the Statue of Liberty, but the idea that we have a tremendous amount of freedom in our country, we may take that for granted often. Equality, again, I say that's debatable. Again, we have equality of opportunity. Some could argue that we don't. We have equality of having whatever job we want. So there's equality in regards to coming to this country, being born in this country, and being able to be treated equal by the government. Sometimes, again, the courts determine whether or not the government has violated that key value that we have. Again, I've emphasized this earlier, it does not mean economic equality. There's no guarantee in our Constitution of economic equality, and I would argue that the framers wrote it to benefit those that had a lot of money originally. And we'll get into that later on. Fundamental democratic processes. Free and fair elections, again, I've argued that, okay, anyone for the most part can run with few restrictions for offices in our government, whether it be local or federal, in our democracy. Are there fair elections? Well, one would argue maybe that you need to have money to have a chance. I would say, especially at the national level, especially when you're talking about the presidency, you have to have money to be able to be successful. So free and fair elections are inherent. Majority rule, minority rights. Majority rule, but we cannot step on the rights of minorities. And when I say minorities, I don't necessarily mean racial minorities. Freedom of expression, right to assemble and protest, all First Amendment protections.